Welcome to We Don't Know What We're Called Yet. I'm pretty sure I'm going with Lone Wolf.
I'm going with Terrell.
Of course you are. Okay, the topic of discussion tonight is something that came up in a Dan Brown book that I was reading. It's the Malthusian catastrophe. What is a Malthusian catastrophe, Terrell?
Well, it's the idea that overpopulation will force everyone to die off. So when too many people, everyone taking too many resources, that the drop off in resources will kill off everybody.
The way I understand it is it's supposed to be a calculation of exponential population growth, as in back during the time of the Black Plague, a third of the European population was wiped out, and yet somehow it took humanity to repopulate from then until the 1800s just to get back to where they were, something like that. I don't remember the numbers directly. And then between 1800 and 1900, the planet population doubled. And then I remember being in school, in elementary school, and it was 4 billion people on the planet. And now, X amount of decades later, it's almost 9. And the part of the Malthusian theory, I guess we can call it, is that there's going to be at least another billion, in my lifetime popping up, and probably yours. We're about the same age.
I mean, it gets faster. The more people there are, the more people there will increase.
And there's only finite resources and they're not making new real estate,
right?
As my dad used to say.
The thing to remember with Malthus is, well, actually, first, do you want to talk about Dan Brown first, or do you want to talk about Malthus first?
We could do the Dan Brown spin on it. I just finished the book, so it's fresh in my mind. Did you read it?
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Okay. So, spoiler alert, I guess.
Yeah, definitely spoilers.
It's going to be a huge spoiler alert because I'm about to tell you the end of the book. So, I guess fast forward a little bit. Anyway, so the premise of the book is there's a brilliant genome coder, I guess for lack of a better word, and he knows how to make viruses, targeted viruses, and he's a diehard fan for Dante Alighieri, and he calls his virus Inferno. And throughout the book, you think he's releasing the Black Plague is pretty much the entire premise of the book. And of course, Dr. Robert Langdon, played by Tom Hanks in my head anyway, some other people disagree with that, is trying to chase down all the clues to find out where the virus is hidden. He knows that it's going to be a waterborne release, but they suspect that it's going to be waterborne and then aerosolized and infect the whole planet. And lo and behold, at the end of the book, it turns out the evil Bond villain is not as evil. Yes, it's I guess it is unethical because he did it without people's knowledge and without anyone's consent.
God complex. He took it on his hands to solve a problem.
Yeah, he did take it upon himself. But instead of releasing a deadly virus to cull the Earth of a third of its population, he releases a targeted sterilization virus so that people can't reproduce.
Which we actually got to talk about a bit more because it's very relevant to COVID-19. It's extremely relevant.
By all means, take it away, Terrell.
Obviously, Dan Brown didn't know anything, and this was to make the drama better and hype. But from the very beginning, when the Wuhan province first had the virus, there was signs that it affects male fertility. It causes lesions in the testicles, and those lesions lead to lowered sperm count, and the sperm that are made have lower motility, meaning they're not able to move from point A to point B as efficiently or at all. So I'm part of this group talking or looking at COVID-19, and we're looking at a scenario where we might have all of southern and midwestern United States have an insane male fertility problem in 2-3 years from now.
So I'll be the devil's advocate here.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't sound like a bad thing. Forget the Bible Belt reference.
Yeah.
Forget that, but overpopulation is a real concern. The Catholic Church crunches down every opportunity for population control, birth control.
Right.
Right?
Right.
the go forth and be plenty mentality. It's not a clown car, people. You shouldn't be popping out 7 or 10 kids. So,
Well, I mean, the go forth and be plenty is literally just one line in the entire Bible, and to revolve around so much of politics like anti-abortion and anti-birth control over one line in the Bible, it's pretty. I mean, you can be anti-abortion, but I don't know. If you're anti-abortion, you can't be anti-birth control. If you're anti-birth control, then you can't be anti-abortion. Like,
yeah, they're mutually exclusive.
yeah. So it's kind of, the Catholic Church is in a very strange place, and the crazy part is the Catholic Church might have been one of the early forebears of euthanasia
Really?
and population control. Well, so we were talking about it on our chats, and I mentioned that there's some things I would say in person, and one of the things is that the first real talk about curtailing population to help the environment was from a group called the Club of Rome.
I've heard of that, actually. Yes.
The Club of Rome put together these reports that basically said, hey, using Malthusian mathematics, if we don't curtail population growth, we're going to outstrip all our food supplies, and which will eventually lead to massive death and chaos.
Societal collapse.
Societal collapse, because there's just too many mouths to feed and not
Yep.
enough food. Our food production didn't happen. They released these reports from the Club of Rome, and I'm going to tie this back into the Catholic Church. What religious power is right next to Rome?
Oh, that must be Mecca.
It
Right?
was very close.
It's so close to Mecca.
It's so
Or
close.
it's a little place called the Vatican City, I believe, which is the wealthiest corporation in the world.
Right. So, you had this call for population control. Pretty sure there was a lot of Vatican Catholic influence. Again, the Church of the Catholic Church was one of the first scientists, so it's not unheard of that they have mathematicians and scientists and everything.
Mm-hmm.
For the Catholic Church to talk about it, there's a lot of suspicion because of anti-abortion, anti-birth control. The reason why no one talks about the Club of Rome papers now or population control now is because it was basically like, we have to control those other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because the earth is getting crowded because those other people over there.
Oh, yeah. Europeans had their hands full of studying, I guess, instead of making babies all throughout the Middle Ages and into the Renaissance. Even
Those other people over there, they're overcrowding the earth. They're making it so we have to have more food. We can't make more food. So there's this. This is a landmine. I'm in the modeling community for climate change, and there's two things we can never touch: population and GDP. We can never say population goes down. We can't. We can't ever even simulate it, because as soon as that stuff is on the paper,
somebody hits the racism button.
no, it's delete. It's your paper's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to get accepted. It's not going to get published. You can't talk about.
Now, let me ask you this: is that only within the U.S. because
Yeah,
of the insanity of the
No, it's
U.S.
global.
administration, or it's a global? It's a global suppression.
It's a global suppression. So
Wow.
let me put it this way: when the Chinese did the one-child policy,
Yes.
no one changed any of the math. They were so afraid. They self-censored. They were so afraid of talking about negative population growth that they couldn't even they didn't change any of the numbers or assumptions.
By they, who do you mean by they? The Chinese
Scientists.
government or scientists?
Scientists. Japan has realistically speaking negative population growth because of aging society and not having kids, and at best our future projections for Japan is always flat, even though we know it's not going to be flat because they're going negative year after year after year. So
But you're not allowed to say that. You have to say at best it's flat.
At best, it's going to be flat.
Now you're allowed to say zero growth or no?
Zero growth is flat.
Okay, well, right. I know that.
Yeah.
But I'm saying in that community, in the scientific community,
we can
you
say
say that, or do you have to use different terminology?
We can say flat or zero population growth. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But we can't say negative. And the honest truth is, America, we're flattening out. We're not flat, but we're flattening out. Europe is absolutely flat.
Really?
Yeah, Europe is absolutely flat, and that's why they need Eastern European immigrants and immigrants from India and whatnot, because they're not making babies, and if they don't, they're going to be outmatched economically. Germany needs all those Syrian refugees. That's the reason why Germany opened its doors to all the Syrian refugees, because Germans are not producing the future workforce they need. So that's also the reason why Africa is considered the future of humanity, because that's the one place where they're making more people and they're progressing industrial-wise and intellectual-wise, education-wise. So we're going to see the power center move from China, and it's going to move towards Africa. And so on. I mean, same thing with India. India, you know, my grandmother, one of them had 7 kids, the other one had 13. You know, not a single person in my generation has more than 2.
Right. Yeah, my I think it was my grandparents. My paternal grandfather was one of 11, I think, and my paternal grandmother was one of something like 13.
Yeah.
And you don't really hear that. If you do, it's on the news now because it's so rare to do that.
Right. Unless, I mean, there are some communities out there that are still practicing that way.
See, my reference before to it's not a clown car.
Well, I mean, evidently it is. I mean, if you go through, let's say, certain Jewish communities, they're still doing 7.
Really?
Yeah, 7, 10, 12. If you look at the Quiverful movement in the Christian sects, they're trying to aim high. That's the whole point. Quiverful.
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
Like, and that's they're revolving their philosophy around that. And obviously anti-abortion. So it's not like that it's not happening, but the number of places that kind of behavior it happens is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So realistically speaking, there's far more scenarios of underpopulation where you have these countries with populations that are not there that they need than overpopulation. Japan is going to have an extreme underpopulation issue soon.
Right, when their older generation dies off.
Yeah, because they didn't have the kids, so we're going to have them go through automation. Instead of having babies, they can't have babies.
They are making cyborgs. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, Terrell. But Japan is making working cyborgs these days.
A lot of things. Japan is doing a lot of things, but then they decided that instead of making jobs easier for their young people and life easier for their young people and more equality for the women and more ease of life and making the choice of having kids an easy one instead of this impossible choice, they decided, well we're just going to use robots. Everything's going to be fine. We're just going to use robots. And so it's an experiment. Japan is an experiment.
Right.
We'll see what happens with the Chinese. Same, well, not the same thing, but the end result is the same. The one-child policy may have been revoked too late. So right now, China is the factory of the world. Well, you can only be the factory of the world if you have people.
Sure, if they have a labor force.
But the labor force drop-off is going to be so steep that it won't be. You'll have to move to India or Africa. So there's way more scenarios of powerful countries now having population issues than there are going to be about countries with overpopulation.
So it sounds like Malthus was wrong then.
Malthus was wrong several things. But he's still a genius. But the thing with Malthus is he's a microbiologist. That's his training. That's his mind view. I mean worldview. And as microbiologists, you work with petri jars. Petri jars have a constant food, the agar. It's only so much food in the petri jar. You don't make new food. So all the viruses or whatever you grow in the petri dish, they'll grow as fast as they can, and they'll fill it up, but they'll all die once the petri dish is empty, once the agar is done. Well, humanity and the way food production is, it doesn't work like a petri dish. We generate the food, and also we can innovate. So when Malthus did his first paper and developed his philosophy, that was pre food revolution.
Just for the record, it's Thomas Robert Malthus, and the essay. It's the essay on the principle of population. It came out in 1798.
Right.
So there's been a lot of time, obviously, to build on this. So
yeah,
I didn't mean to interrupt. So I'll continue.
No. You were being specific. The thing is, he could not or did not foresee advances in food generation. So, a single scientist basically found rice, a new variety of rice that can power the next evolution. And that's what we're doing as humans. We're innovating. We're constantly finding new ways to make more food, more calories than we did before. So the petri dish analogy kind of breaks down because the level of food that we can make doesn't stay constant. Now, things like climate change work against us. As climate change goes, we're going to have less nutritious food. Our food is already decreasing nutrition.
Sure, I know if you pick up a bag of spinach at the store, it doesn't have anywhere near the nutritional content it had 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Right.
Yeah. So there's obviously things that work against us, but as an innovative species, we've staved off Malthus's collapse at least 3 times, maybe 6.
So is this where GMOs come in as innovative nutrition?
GMOs are extremely innovative, yeah. Mm-hmm. So if we can make drought-resistant crops, if we can make higher caloric crops or faster-growing crops through genetic manipulation, that's innovation. So the Malthusian mathematics depends on constants. It depends on that's the biggest constant. It's the food. It's the resource. How fast can a resource be replenished? Mm-hmm. If we keep innovating, we keep increasing the rate of resource replenishment. So I'll give you an example of a next bleeding edge tier of food regeneration. Using the oceans to grow kelp. Kelp tastes horrible. It almost tasteless. Kelp oil is it's oil. It has no taste basically. I've tried it. All those bad things aside, it's calories. It's producible out in a salt environment, so salt water. You can make kelp, and unlike land, there's tons and tons of sea that is not used for anything. So,
point of order: I believe the ocean is used to corral our plastic.
Yes. The plastic has to go somewhere, because we gave it to China to recycle, and their version of recycling is just throw it into the ocean. So that's another story for another day.
Maybe we might tackle that one because we are straying a little bit from the topic, but that was my own fault.
No, but that's a story but kelp is might be a revolutionary innovation in food, because at the end of the day, we really taste isn't what matters. It's the calories. You have to look at the calories, and if we can produce calories from the ocean, and it's not fish because we're overfishing it,
right?
And it can withstand acidic ocean because of climate change. Who knows how much more food we can produce than we produce now?
Yeah, it's definitely. Taste isn't even tertiary at that point. You just have to feed the human machine.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll figure out the taste through other things afterwards.
Through red dye number 7, perhaps.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it really does taste bad. And
I've had kelp before too.
It's.
I would take kale over kelp, and kale. I don't care what anybody says. Raw kale is horrifically bad tasting.
You gotta shred it.
Yeah, you gotta butter it up and put some garlic or something in with that or whatever.
But that's the issue with Malthus. Is Malthus didn't take into account two things: one, the innovation in food or replenishing the resource that we're concerned
Mhm.
about, and two, changes in reproductive rate. So the viruses in an agar jar, in a petri dish, they're going to produce up to their max limit. There's no intelligence. They're going to
Until they starve, right? It'll just
Until they
produce until it starves.
Yeah, and even when they're starving, they don't slow down.
Right.
So they'll keep producing at their max rate until all the food is done. But the human beings, we are an intelligent race, and we do change our behaviors, and we do have behavior modification, and people on their own decide, to change. So I don't have the stats in front of me, but there's significantly more females out there that are choosing not to have children. Period. Now than ever before in history. There's now men are actually catching up, where men are saying, like, I don't want to have kids. I don't want to even be married. There's guys who don't want to be married now. So we don't. A lot of these Malthusian mathematics, once you tackle their assumptions on constants, it breaks down.
Mm-hmm.
So I personally do not believe that the world will have an overpopulation problem. I personally believe the world is going to have food, water, energy problems, but not overpopulation. Like even America, I know like cities can be called overpopulated, but there's so much of America that's empty.
Right.
There's so much of, and it's not just America. That's like if you go to Europe, there's so much of Europe that's depopulated. Japan, they're stopping train stations because they're not needed. There's empty countrysides over and over. Italy, they have such problems that they're willing to give you free real estate as long as you commit to improving and fixing it up and not selling right away.
Oh, so you can't be a flipper.
You can't be a flipper because you're getting it for free.
You're getting it for free, and it's most likely a fixer-upper, I'm assuming.
I like there's whole villages in Italy that are being completely depopulated right now because no one's making children, and the young people moving away to bigger cities.
Right.
So whole parts of the Italian countryside are just emptying out.
Terrell, I would love a Roman villa.
You can get a Roman villa.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The problem is there's no electricity.
Yeah, there's no electricity. There's probably no plumbing.
There's no plumbing. It is
Right.
legit a Roman villa. You can get a. I think the bigger thing is actually like the not being able to sell.
Right.
Because imagine dumping hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix this place up, and then you're just like, oh, I'm retiring. I don't need to live here, or my friends or my kids are over there.
Well, the loophole might be is fix it up and then rent. Make it a destination rental or something like that.
That's possible.
Just like it's happening where we are right now, right?
Yeah.
Because of the pandemic, people in New York City are
coming
snapping up real estate out on Long Island,
Right.
left, right, and center. I spoke with someone.
It's a seller's market.
I spoke with someone in Hampton Bays a week or two ago, and he has a place. His house is waterfront property with a small 2-bedroom cottage on the property. Terrell, give me a number of how much he's renting that for. What do you think he's renting it for?
A month? Or a week?
Try a week.
700.
Sir, nowhere near close. 5,000 a week, and he's getting it. He has actually a waiting list of people from New York City who want to escape the city
Yeah.
and come out and rent that place.
I mean,
We're in the wrong line of business.
yeah. I think it might be a permanent thing. New York City is gonna have problems and might have problems for a long time, and I think people are deciding that it's not worth living there. And COVID is not gonna. We were just talking in the car. COVID's not gonna go away anytime soon.
Right, we were saying that's going to become
Permanent.
I don't want to call it a pop culture backdrop, but it will be a cultural backdrop for the foreseeable future because it's not going to go away because
Right.
certain governments aren't attacking it the way they should and putting out federal edicts the way they,
New York City in particular has certain populations that refuse to obey the laws, and
Right. Well, I was referencing
you know.
that there was no federal mandate, that it was left up to the states on their own. Then you have places like Florida that just had their Sturgis motorcycle rally,
Oh,
You
Sturgis
know,
is North Dakota.
No, where's the one in Florida? The Florida. I might have gotten the name wrong, and I may have just made a fool out of myself. But the motorcycle rally in Florida.
Oh, that's Myrtle Beach.
Maybe that one.
Yeah.
One of those two just happened, and sure enough,
Sure enough.
there is an
Absolutely.
uptick.
Yeah, Florida doesn't believe in COVID, and we're gonna see. I mean, if so, to be fair to Florida, for all the shit that we say, their version of COVID is different from the one we have in New York.
Really?
Yeah.
Different strain? You mean?
Different strain.
Okay.
So New York is lucky enough to first get it from Italy, which is the very harsh, very fatal version, and it evolved here to be even more fatal environment. The version that's in Florida and actually the deep south it's like a stomach flu. They get the runs, they get cramps, they get stomach issues, and then they get over it and they think they're fine. That's the reason why a lot of people in the south and Florida are so cavalier.
Right.
Because they're like, how are you dying from this? It's just a stomach thing. And remember that thing I was telling you about the testes and,
Mhm.
and lesions and sperm motility?
Yep.
What's a really easy way to fool people to not be safe? It's just a stomach virus. Don't worry about it. There's no connection.
So are you saying, Terrell, that we're going to have less Florida man stories in the news?
We're gonna have more Florida men. We're gonna have Florida men stories about why they can't have kids and testosterone replacement's not gonna help. Nothing's gonna help. I mean, we're gonna see a lot of all throughout the South,
So-
all throughout Wisconsin and everything.
You started saying before about certain religious neighborhoods, I guess, for lack of a better word, in the city.
If you look at the New York City neighborhoods, other than New Rochelle, that have all the highest new cases for COVID, they're all in places where high levels of Hasidic Jews who are protesting.
Yeah, that was just on the news the other night, actually, where there was a camera. They were actually they weren't trying to wrestle the camera away from whoever was filming, but they were trying to block the view.
Yeah.
And it was a huge rally, not a mask to be seen in sight.
Oh no, they burn them out. They go in the middle of the street and they throw the masks in a fire pyre. They
A little Fahrenheit 451, huh?
very much so. I mean, and in that population, they're used to not having to obey the laws of the city because there are different set of rules that have applied to them forever. And this is going to sound like a conspiracy theory, and I'm only saying this because we're never going to release this. But people have figured out the main reason why they're protesting so hard is if you let the city and the government actually apply rules to them, then all those other things that they do, that they hide, like child abuse, rape, spousal abuse, all the culty shit.
Right.
They're afraid.
Misogyny.
Extreme.
Yeah.
They're afraid that all those things that they've been allowed to get away with, now they can't get away with. So it's like we have to fight the COVID rules now because if we don't fight it here, they're gonna get us here.
Meanwhile, they'll just start dying off because they're not.
They're not
protected.
afraid of dying off. They're not. They think that this is for the Gentiles because they're impure. You know it's really it. Like it's kind of like a whole lot of people. Oh, like remember when AIDS was just for the gay
Yep.
thing? And everyone's like, no, it's not just gays. And they're like, no, it's not gonna affect me. I'm straight.
Well, I'll just go shoot up again. I'll be fine.
I'll be fine.
Right.
Yeah. And guess what?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like this attitude, like, hey, we don't talk to outsiders, so we're never gonna get it.
But yet, I guess they don't consider their business interactions and whatnot, where they're most likely dealing with non-Jews in that respect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Limited. Well, they to them, but I got into trouble with some people privately when I said, like, as long as the Jews don't conform, along with also the Dominicans and the Haitians, the Hispanics in Long Island. Like if you have all these specific groups that refuse to comply, along with rich white people who think that we're rich. This is
Yeah,
poor
money's gonna keep me safe.
Yeah,
Yep.
poor people don't get this. Look, you're not going to get this from those restaurants. You get it from the Mexicans. Like, as long as people keep thinking that this is for those other people over there, and the
Mhm.
disease just travels by air, so it doesn't give a crap about what your bank
Right, of
account
course.
is or what your race is. We're not. This isn't going to go away.
So do you think, to get back onto the track, do you think that, well, it was Corona initially, now it's COVID-19. Do you think that might be,
COVID-19 is a coronavirus. It's a same family. It's a family name.
do you think that this is the inferno, so to speak? That COVID might be that?
I really, this is just my own personal pet theory, and from what I gather, I think we're going to see an epidemic 3-4 years from now. I think
A resurgence of this epidemic or something else? You know?
infertility.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
I think we're going to see, as Americans, a whole lot of guys who come of age where they're like, okay, it's time to settle down, and they're shooting blanks, and then they're going to be like, why is this happening? Is it, oh, do I have low testosterone? Then they're going to get looked at and like, hey, you're shooting blanks. Like, testosterone's going to help you.
Mhm.
How am I shooting blanks? You have cuts in your balls. I mean, that's what lesions and testes are. They're cuts inside.
Sure.
And then we're going to look back at 2020 and we're going to be like, oh, maybe I should have been more serious, or oh.
And I think that goes back to it have being federally mandated instead of being a crapshoot of leaving it up to each state.
Yeah, or
To
made it
decide.
political. Politicizing a plague is, I can't imagine how much better off we would have been if we were just in a 9/11. Say, hey, we're all in this together.
Right.
If we all just sit inside our homes for 1 month, most of this is going to go away.
There was pictures. It's up to you to determine how much, not you, Terrell, but I mean the audience in general, how much you trust MSN as a valid news source. I think New Zealand has gone 100 days without a single case now.
Yeah,
There's pictures of people like back out in the street,
yeah, they're
and
normal.
biking, and they've returned to a normal. Forget this new normal. This isn't normal. This is a crisis. This isn't
Yeah.
normal. They've returned to normal,
Right.
and I just don't think that the U.S. is going to get there.
The U.S. is definitely not going to get there, and that streak was broken twice, and both times it was Americans coming in. Or-
That's why there's travel bans on American tourists going
Yeah.
to countries.
Yeah,
I don't have a
shithole-
problem with that. I think we're the idiots perpetuating it.
Yeah, we're the shithole country that they like. So they had streaks going on in New Zealand, and both times it was American tourists.
Even right now, there's
We can't go to Canada.
Yeah, right. We can't cross the Canadian border. They're building a wall.
Yeah, the Mexicans are literally building a wall right now. The Canadians aren't, but the Mexicans are legit.
I was joking about the Canadians, but
I know there's
I know that I don't think we can cross at the borders right now to get into Canada.
you can't. Yeah. If we didn't politicize this thing, and we all sucked it up for 1 month, most of the states, honestly, would have been shut down. But again, I hope I don't sound like I'm picking on one specific group, but the facts are the facts. When the person we know as Patient Zero, who brought the Italian strain to America, was a Jewish gentleman who went to synagogue in New Rochelle. That's where the infection happened. He was a businessman. He went back and forth between Italy and U.S. and he infected his entire synagogue, and it spread from there. As a New Rochelle, when they were told to quarantine, they refused, and the governor of New York State had to bring in the National Guard, and under gunpoint,
I remember that.
they were quarantined. And by the way, under gunpoint they didn't comply completely either. So, if it's not just Hicks from the South, it's not just hardcore right wing, it's not like all those women and men that were anti-vaxxers, they were like, oh, this isn't real, this is fake, this is just to keep us, to add more vaccines and mercury in our blood. Like, we all across the the demographics of America, we have people who refuse to comply. This is for other people. This is a lie. This is not for me.
Right.
And
you're oppressing my rights.
yeah,
Why do I need to wear a mask? My right is I don't have to wear one, which is just ridiculous.
right. It's my body, my choice. Like, you know.
I don't even think it goes that far. I think a lot of people
No,
are
they say
tied.
that. They do say that. That's
I
what
thought a lot of it was being tied into freedom of speech, or which has morphed into freedom of expression.
Mhm.
Right? Freedom of speech has been muddled over the
Right.
decades, and a lot of it is really translated as freedom of expression. I can do what I want.
Yeah,
Right? My First Amendment rights. I can do whatever I want.
right.
Right.
And with no repercussions. And it's
Right.
like, you know, we did this to ourselves. I mean, the American strain of COVID is worse than any other strain in the world.
Wow.
So the Italian one was the most,
It was the most deadly, I think. Right?
at
The
one
Italian
time.
strain.
But then we came here, and because we let it survive, it kept evolving.
Right.
Now it's like the American strain is literally the worst one. So, you know, if you look at the original Chinese strains, it's actually quite mild.
It's quite what? Sorry.
Mild.
Mild. Got it.
So, in California, they got the Chinese strains. So there's a lot of contact between California, Washington, Vancouver, with China. So they have the Chinese strain, and you know, people just shrug it off because, you know, it's the milder version.
Mhm.
While over here, holy shit.
No, I know. As you well know, I suffered through it for 7 weeks.
Yeah.
I had the giant sledgehammer version.
And that giant sledgehammer version has traveled from New York all the way to Wisconsin.
Because they lifted travel bans
Yeah,
prematurely.
right. And Wisconsin never had, they never took it seriously. They never locked down, never nothing. They
That's
still
because
have
they were busy storming their state buildings. But that's a topic for another time.
lockdown.
One thing I wanted to mention is
But-
it's flaring up on Long Island again, by the way.
Right.
There's 5 zip codes on Long Island now that are showing upticks in infections.
So most of the zip codes out of the 5 are in deeply Hispanic areas.
Mm-hmm.
Remember I was talking about non-compliance?
Right, non-compliant. Yep.
I think 3 of them are in deeply Hispanic areas, and the other 2 are in deeply rich areas.
Right, I know one of them was a much wealthier area of Huntington.
Yeah.
I think it was the 11746 zip code.
Right.
Was one of them. Yep.
And for the reasons we were saying, it's not for us. It can't happen to us.
Right.
Those other people. It's not going to go away because this is a country full of all these different groups of people who refuse to comply. President Trump getting sick was a turning point for a good bunch of them, because all of a sudden the guy who's been telling us a hoax and it's
Right,
lying,
the guy who's been untouchable for the past 4 years.
right,
Right.
got hit, and people know that the president of the United States is going to have the greatest medical,
Of course.
you know,
Access to drugs that the rest of us won't have.
right, not like
Experimental, whatever.
no nonstop, like nothing. He gets everything.
Yep.
The president of the United States must be kept alive. But the regular person on the street, even if someone with money, isn't going to get that. You know, it's not going to get the experimental shit. It's not going to get any of that service. It's not going to have a team of 17, you know, high-end doctors waiting hand and foot. I think Trump getting sick actually probably saved lives, because people just all of a sudden is like, oh wait,
Might have opened their eyes, you think?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot.
Hopefully.
I really do think so. He's trying to, him and his family trying to walk things back, but I think he can't. Once the genie's out of the bottle, like once it's like,
Right. Well, that's what we were saying before, is that it's going to be, again, I don't want to use the word pop culture, but I can't think of a better term, in that COVID is going to be part of the pop culture background of the U.S. for the foreseeable future.
right,
It's going to be woven into the fabric of everything. You know, I can't imagine when we're all going to stop wearing masks. I don't see that happening
No,
for the
for a long
foreseeable
time.
future either.
yeah. And the thing is, we're saying like, oh, the Italian or the American strains that are much harder went from New York City and went to Wisconsin, but Wisconsin is going to then spread it back to New York. It's going to
Right.
keep like
Yeah, it's not a one-way travel. It's bi-directional.
yeah, like if like okay, so New York is going to be free or New York is going to be done. Let's say we all lock down, New York City's ready to go, and then the tourists from Wisconsin come.
Somebody came to see the Statue of Liberty, and they're
Right.
from Wisconsin.
Right.
Right.
Then,
Yep.
then it's a wrap.
Or they wanted to see the Macy's windows because the holidays are around the corner.
Right. They want to see the Rockefeller Center tree,
Mm-hmm.
and then so it's going to, even if we have some states that are getting their act together, and as long as there's states that don't, then we're all in this together. You can't just be like, oh, it's over there. The only people who are allowed to say, oh, it's those other people, and are the countries that are islands. If you're an island nation, you're fully capable and you have done it. So New Zealand, Japan,
Right.
Singapore, they're island nations, man. They can lock shit down. Like once they get their stuff handled,
Right.
they don't have to.
They don't have to open their borders back up if they don't want to let tourism. Sure.
Right. And guess what? New Zealand, day after day, with normal life. South Korea has extremely good procedures, so they're not an island nation, but they're able to handle it.
But didn't they just have a huge, I keep using the word uptick. That's
Yeah.
not the word I'm looking for. They just had a huge
Flare-up.
flare-up.
Yeah, their flare-ups happen because South Korea has a cult problem.
Right, they do have a cult problem. As a matter of fact, that was their initial.
That was the first
Wasn't
one.
that their first vector?
Yeah.
Was the cult
Yep.
leader
Mm-hmm.
telling all of his members, refuse the order, don't wear a mask, it's not real.
Then there was another church that decided to all have communal. What's it called when you drink?
Sacrament.
Sacrament, using a spray bottle. And some of the people put their mouth on the spray bottle so they could get the full sacrament. Then this latest one, again, another mega church, or let's just say cult, another cult, who refused to comply and refused to help the government by saying who's inside their cult because they didn't want to be
Not only
disbanded.
refusing, they're working against
Right. Yeah.
by suppressing information.
Right. They don't want the government to know who's in their church because they're afraid that they're going to get disbanded for being a cult.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if you're an island nation, you're fully capable of stopping COVID. If you're not, then
I believe it. By the way, I'm not arguing the point
Yeah.
against you. I believe it.
if you're not, it's just so UK having COVID is kind of like what the hell's going on. You could stop it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no excuse. But Singapore, New Zealand, Japan, they can shut it down, and they have.
I haven't heard anything about Iceland, because they're sort of an isolated nation as well. They're not an island nation, but they're rather isolated.
They shut down all tourism. What's it called? The Blue Lake or Blue? What's the big tourist destination in Iceland? It's
You've got me. I don't really know.
Reykjavik. In Reykjavik, there's the Blue Lagoon.
Okay.
They shut all tourism down. And once they heard that spreads through the air, and their tourist spots are all these heat vents and whatnot. That's people.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, sweating and so they shut it down.
That was smart. That was smart on their part.
But what can New York State do? It's right next to Pennsylvania.
I think the extreme case would be a military blockade at the borders with the other states.
Yeah, but there's too much border.
There is too much border.
There's way too much. I mean, why would you? Let's say California. Remember I said it had the Chinese strain.
Right.
It's still infected. Let's say you're Arizona. That's how Arizona got infected. They're right next to California. So, what do you do if you're Arizona? You're right next to this massive state.
Not only that, you have states around you.
And you have states
Yeah.
around you. And you need tourism.
They need tourism to survive,
Right.
no less. Yeah.
So, we have... U.S. is not going to... I think we're just going to keep... We're going to infect other countries.
unless there's some sort of federal mandate that comes out in the next couple months, let's say. I don't want to get into the politics of Trump versus Biden or whatever, but if there's some sort of federal lockdown of this is what we're doing, it's a federal crime now if you don't comply with these regulations. I think that might open some eyes.
The moonshot is the vaccine. That's the one thing. Like, the vaccine is going to be unlikely soon.
Well, Fauci's saying in the next, early next year.
Unlikely.
Okay.
And the reason why it's unlikely is because you have multiple strains in the U.S., right? And one of the problems with COVID is that, and which is a big differentiator between COVID and the flu, is our antibodies remember the flu for 8-9 months. That's why the flu season is yearly, it's annual. Like, once your body forgets how to deal with the flu, you're open to getting it again, but that's like 9 months from now, since you got sick. COVID can go from 3 to 5 months. So, worst case scenario, you can get sick four times in 1 year.
Yep.
If your body can't remember something for 3 months, the vaccine doesn't matter. Because, okay, you're vaccinated for 3 months or 5 months, or let's go crazy and say 6 months. You're still gonna
best case scenario is you get infected twice in a year.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's not giving. I mean, it's gonna take a while for them to figure out how to make a vaccine that gives permanent.
And then you gotta vaccinate against the various strains that are floating around in the US as well.
If they're different enough from each other.
Right.
So that's 2 points of difficulty, and then you gotta convince Americans to take vaccines.
Which is another battle entirely.
Yeah, I think
especially when you have celebrities outspoken against it.
I mean, we were just talking about Jenny McCarthy. And
yeah, she's been a huge anti-vaxxer because we were talking about Cobra Kai earlier.
Yeah, like she. So if you have a massive population that doesn't even want to do vaccines, then, actually, the real problem is to create a vaccine not against COVID. Because I think that we can get something in a few months, but something that our bodies can remember for a long enough period.
Right.
That is going to be the challenge.
Something that'll be at least a year.
I think so.
Right. Because it'll need to last in your system at least a year, so that way.
Yeah.
The best case scenario would be nobody gets infected in a year, and then the virus dies off because it doesn't have hosts anymore.
Right.
Right.
Like, or even close to it. Let's say we go like the flu, like 9-10 months. If we can get 9-10 months and everybody in the whole population, like the COVID doesn't have any place to sit, then it's just long. Right now, 3 to 5 is just so short. If your body isn't remembering it, there's no chance. Unless you're willing to get a vaccine 4 times a year.
I would, having had COVID.
Yeah.
I would be first in line.
Yeah, I mean, if that's another option. Like, if we can't if our bodies can't remember, then we could do this thing where we go constantly. So eventually we choke it out of air.
Right.
But then,
you need 100% of people to do that.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get 100% compliance.
It's just not. We're not. We're just.
I'm sure you know from your doctoral studies that the confidence index, in order to have, you can't have 100% confidence index because you have to have negative infinity, positive infinity, and we're not going to get even close to that. We won't even get close to 99% in the U.S.
We're not going to get. We're just not. It's just, and we're going to have rich people not doing the vax, and we're going to have poor people not doing the vax, and we're going to have educated people not doing
religious people.
Like, it's just, and there's no such thing as herd immunity. And it every time I hear a politician talk herd immunity, again, we're being agnostic about the political factions. The U.S., the scientific community, the world community has known that there's no such thing with herd immunity because we can't remember it in our bodies long enough. So there's no, like, every time we hear people talk about herd immunity, because
Well, define herd immunity for our listeners.
enough people have had the disease or the virus where they've built up of an immunity where that the virus effectively cannot spread anymore. So even if it doesn't have to be the entire community having gotten sick, but if enough of the community has immunity to it now, that it will die in the vine. The air isn't there for the fire to go. And if our bodies can't remember this for more than 3 months or 5 months, then there's no such thing. It's impossible. It's an impossibility. So every time you hear...
It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah, every time you hear a politician talk about herd immunity, they know it's not real. They know it's a lie, and they're lying anyway.
Wait a minute, Terrell. I got to get this straight in my head. Are you saying politicians lie?
I think they're lying with our lives.
Yeah, that's a pretty horrific thing. I mean, obviously, those of you who don't know me, I thrive on sarcasm. That was a sarcastic remark that obviously politicians lie. That's their bread and butter for keeping their jobs.
Yeah.
But the fact that they would lie to gamble with people's lives, that's unconscionable.
I mean, Bob Woodward, in February, on tape, asked Trump about it, and Trump said, oh, this is a serious disease. It travels through the air. February. And while Bob Woodward is an asshole who's just looking up for money, because he should have released that tape that day. The very next day, he should have been like, hey, Washington Post, I got something. And just put it out there. And that way, maybe you could have saved tens of thousands of lives. Maybe 100 out of the 200.
Mm-hmm.
He sat on it for his book. I know he's an asshole, but he did what he did. The President of the United States knew in February that this spread through the air and it was serious. And then he went on TV saying it's not worse than a flu, it's a hoax. The Democrats are making this up.
States, fend for yourselves.
Yeah, don't wear masks. Only losers wear masks. You're weak. I mean, it's almost like a nightmare situation that our country's going through. We have too many Americans that are anti-science.
Mm-hmm.
We have too many
I
politicians.
wholeheartedly am aware of that.
Yeah, we have too many politicians who are frankly 70 and above, and they never had to deal with this shit, so they don't know.
Not only that, they're bought by
massive corporations.
Right, they're bought by religion and corporations.
I mean, there were several politicians, I think, in Florida and California and other parts of the South where they were told by their backers not to lock down for the economy. They listened to the people who pay their campaign contributions
instead of science. Instead of
science.
cold hard facts.
So
of course.
DeSantis in Florida, the governor of Georgia, it's incomprehensible. But those businesses did the calculation. They're like, well, we can't lock up because we got to make our quarterly, income.
Mm-hmm.
Blah blah blah. I mean, from their point of view, they're right. But if you don't have politicians who can't think for themselves or listen to experts, or they're so old.
So this is way off topic now from what we were originally talking about.
But I think it's on topic because I'm telling you, 3 years from now,
it's gonna flare up again. You think?
That we're gonna be talking about dudes can't have kids,
right?
And we're gonna be like, oh, remember that practice podcast we did about overpopulation? We're gonna throw back our heads and laugh because it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be way worse than anyone anticipates.
That I guess relates back to the population control and the premise of the Dan Brown book Inferno.
Yeah.
I had a point I wanted to make and I've forgotten it. So
we'll get back. Dan Brown's the virus had a population control element to it.
Somehow, because of fictional science, the virus was able to randomly select 33% of the population.
Yeah, that's not.
So obviously, you put a virus out. I mean, I don't know anything about virology or epidemiology at all.
You can only do something like that if there's a particular gene sequence that happens to be in X%. But then it
aren't we
wouldn't be random.
We're only 2% away from the housefly,
Yeah.
aren't we? So how in the world do you isolate to that level of accuracy with I don't think you can. Again, I'm not even a layman in this particular topic, but I can't imagine that's possible yet.
Yeah. It's not even how you can't even randomize it.
Right. So, but again, it's a fictional book.
Yeah.
It's well written. It's believable because he throws enough facts in and real world occurrences.
Right.
But so the idea was randomly 33% of the population can't reproduce. I think I said 30% earlier. I meant to say 33% because that was the percent of the population in Europe that had died from the Black Plague. And apparently there was some math behind that if 33% of the population can't reproduce, then population growth, sorry Thrall, goes negative. Can't say that word, yeah. But if 33% of the population can't reproduce, then it starts going negative and we start reducing the population instead of increasing.
I don't think, even that number is kind of strange. Like, let's say you take a third population out, so we have about, let's say 9 billion. If we go back to 6 billion, we're just behind not too many years. Like, why even do that? Why kill so many people? Because they're just going to come back in 10, 15 years.
Well, he wasn't killing them. He was sterilizing them in the book.
I mean, let's just say they killed them. I mean, it's just like...
Okay, sure. People can't reproduce.
Yeah.
They die off. Okay, yeah, I understand what you're saying.
I mean, it's kind of like...
It's a humane death, I guess.
It's a humane death. Like, I think that's more Dan Brown being just a writer thing. Like, oh my God, 1/3. But... At 6 billion, we went from 6 billion to 9 billion really fast.
Yeah, within our lifespan, since we were, as I said earlier, since we were in elementary school to now.
Like super fast. So it's like not that big a deal to commit crimes against humanity, just to save the Earth for 10 years. It doesn't, quite work out.
You know what else I found out between elementary school and now?
What?
In the elementary school books, dinosaurs were green. Guess what, Tara? They're not green.
They have feathers.
They had feathers, and they were like multi-hued colors.
Yeah, they have feathers.
Mind-blowing.
I mean...
And that's not me trying to be flippant about the topic of discussion.
But yeah, shit changes.
But it's just, things change dramatically in just a few decades.
Yeah, like, our understanding changed. So, I mean, again, like these...
You know what that relates to that we should discuss next time? Moore's Law. Right, the roughly 18-month timeline of everything.
There's so many better people for that. There's one guy named Cortex I follow, and they have a roadmap that's so science fiction.
We should discuss it next time.
Yeah. It's like, but yeah, like human population going back to 6 billion. If those 6 billion people don't change their behavior, it doesn't matter. If those 6 billion decide like, hey, I'm only gonna have a kid and that's it.
One kid.
Yeah, then now we have an issue. Now
I'm going to say realistic approach. I know that's subjective, but if you're objective about it, the whole point of reproducing is just to replace yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So you have 2 kids. You just replace yourself.
Right.
And your spouse.
Right.
That's it. But then you have the religious aspect of, well, you should crank out as many as you possibly can in your lifespan.
Right.
And that completely skews that result. And something that's going to be a little bit of a touchy subject, but is less educated.
Let's just, before you go to there, but,
sure.
2017, U.S. has already gone below 2. The U.S. is not replacing.
Really?
Yeah, U.S. is below replacement. It has been below replacement.
I can walk out my door right now, and most of my neighbors have more than 2 kids.
No, U.S. has been below replacement for quite a bit.
So I was originally approaching this, and I was about to say it, and again, it's a touchy subject, I guess, but less educated countries, the mentality of machismo and worth as a male proven through virility, I thought that would still be contributing to the population growth.
No.
No, that's not a thing, huh?
No, that was a wrong. Um, that was a misunderstanding of culture. It's the Latin countries and South American countries. They're all slowing down.
Okay.
Because we're not farmers. When you were a farmer, like more kids is more free labor.
Yeah, more free labor on the farm. Yep.
And as soon as societies move away from the farm, you know,
Right.
you have different changes.
Hmm.
So it's, going back to the U.S. shifted below replacement in, I think, 2011.
Is that a really interesting way of you saying negative population growth? I know you're not allowed to say it. Just give me a head nod.
Listen, the U.S. has gone through immigration, so population is gone. It's not negative; it's positive because of immigration.
Well, nobody can see us right now, Terrell. Just give me a head nod. Just give me the nod.
I mean, it's below 2, and UK fell below 2 recently, 2020. Sorry,
very recently.
Sorry, 209.
Got it. Okay.
India's right now, the latest is 2017 is 2.24, but India went from 6 in 1960 to 2.24 in 2017. So human behavior can change.
Right.
So the warning signs of overpopulation are, I think, really overblown. I don't think we're gonna have an overpopulation issue. I think we're gonna have a gray issue where we have more old people than young people. That is going to be a big issue.
I think they prefer silver fox, not gray.
Well, I mean, that's the reason why I was saying Africa might be the leader of, might be like, we're going to look at Africa like, oh shit, Jay, we should have had some real estate in Uganda, man, when it was cheap, when it was dirt. Well, because it's dirt now.
I don't know who this J guy is that you're referencing.
I mean,
but all right. Yeah, back to the old business plan, right, of opening up the marijuana farm somewhere where it's legal. But then there's the issue of the crossing state lines and import. God. And we just gave up on that because there's way too many regulations and too many potholes in the way.
I mean, okay, so let's wrap this up in 9 minutes so we can listen to this. Man, all those vape shops that were opening in anticipation of turning themselves into dispensaries once things got legal in New York. Everyone thought New York was just around the corner, right? Just around the corner.
Right, yeah, it was always brought up.
Fuck that. They all legalization in New York is so far away.
I mean, never mind that. Suffolk County and Nassau County have voted to maintain the ban.
Yeah.
So you're completely out of luck if you live in either of those places.
So all those vape shops that were started up not to sell vape, because there was only so much vape you can sell, but they were really trying to be dispensaries.
They're trying to get on the bleeding edge of...
Yeah, they're trying to get the hot spots so that when they turn into dispensaries, they don't have to... They have locked in leases and locations. They're all sitting there with their thumbs up their asses now. They're just like, the fuck, Massachusetts legalized?
Didn't Jersey was pretty close or something?
Jersey's
like that?
pretty close. Connecticut legalized.
And Pennsylvania did too, I think, right?
No,
they did not. Okay.
No, like
I might be misremembering.
But if you and I got into that dispensary plan, like when we were thinking about it,
we'd be fucked.
We would be sitting at that vape shop, just smoking all our vapes.
Yeah, smoking vapes and cigars and
just dying.
Yeah,
just kind of like crying. Yeah, like I gotta wonder what is the holdup with New York State.
Probably not enough payoffs.
Yeah, something. Because wherever marijuana dispensaries open up, bars, business goes down, alcohol sales go down, cigarette sales go down, illegal drug use goes down.
Wow.
So I mean,
I didn't know that part.
Yeah, well, when marijuana becomes legal, why risk legal jeopardy when you can get high and just have as much of a good time?
Yeah.
You know, like you don't Yeah, no, it was. Though I don't know. Every time, like when we were riding out today, I saw how many vape stores there were, and I'm like, Long Island doesn't need this many vape stores.
There's a brand new one opening up down the street.
Yeah,
Actually, it's taken over an old cigar shop space.
and
And it's like, dude, you're not going to survive there because there's another one that's 2 blocks away from you
right.
that's got way more neon lights than you. That's also the trend I've noticed. We are so far down the rabbit hole now, but I've noticed like it's almost like each vape shop tries to be their own Disney World with the
Yeah.
attraction, the signs and the lights and the LEDs.
They try to be a bar. They try to be
But
like
bars are usually like low light, and vape shops, especially on Long Island, it's like, you know, 890 watt bulbs and
You're right.
and super bright LEDs. I don't know what the lumen count is, but
You want to know the biggest problem with the vape as the bar concept? Women don't go to vape.
right, it's usually young guys. It's usually
Young
like probably
guys
the
older.
18 to 34 crowd or something like
So-
that.
I mean, you can stock your vape store with really hot women to be the barristers,
Mm-hmm.
you know, or the equivalent of. But if other women don't come, you never.
Yeah, then it doesn't pay off.
Yeah. So that's the failing of the vape as the next bar for the millennials and whatnot. Because the men are definitely going, but the women aren't.
All right, on that note,
Let's-
Taral, thank you all for joining us tonight. We'll be back in a week. See you then.
See